Hello there, and welcome to this very wonky improvised stream. This is my podcasting device. Normally, it's hooked up to this computer, and then I use the computer in conjunction with this Canon 80D, which is right there around. You can barely see it, which is connected to the computer via USB. Then I use Ecamm Live as my streaming software, and that usually really works, and it works fine, and I'm happy with it. However, being a geek and being not very smart, I decided to install the new operating system, the beta of the operating system on this Mac, which is Mac OS Catalina, because well, the beta was available and I was curious, so I installed Mac OS Catalina. And lo and behold, my streaming software stopped working, and I've tried everything, and I just can't get it to work. It is just not working. And so I need to record my podcast. And I want to stream it, as always. So that's why I'm using this phone, and I immediately noticed that the phone is clashing, the frequency of it clashes with these cheap LED ceiling lights here, so it's causing interference and whatnot. So, but anyway, I'm just gonna try it. I keep looking in the wrong direction because the camera is right there. Which one is this actually using? The other downside of using my phone is that the YouTube streaming app is unable to use my wide angle lens on the phone for some reason. So I have to put it actually quite far away, and of course you won't be able to hear the final sound. And what I'm doing now, let me show you what happens in case it goes wrong. Here is a rig, a Joby tripod. So I'm gonna try to uh, let the phone lean. How do you say that? I'm gonna put it with the back to the Mac, and then hopefully the thing will balance. It's very wonky because it won't fit it onto the rig that I have. Okay, this kind of more or less works, but I'm afraid that the phone is gonna fall. It's gonna fall, basically. Do you guys see the flickering of the light? Let me know, because I can try something else, and that is to turn off the lights and just use daylight. I'm not sure what the thing is going to do. Let me see what happens if I turn off the light. Okay. Well, it actually works. It looks better. It looks better with daylight than with artificial light. It's more natural, and at least you won't have all the flickering. So what I just hope is that there will be enough daylight, because it's getting dark already. So hold on. I'm just going to open the curtains. Oh, the joys of live streaming, really. Okay, maximum. I'll open the door. You'll still have some color, because of course the daylight, the daylight is, ooh, focus, hello, focus, on my face, yes. Is it focused? No, it's not focused. Can I click on my face? Yeah, I just clicked on my nose, and now we're in focus. So, because, well, I was ready to give up. I hate it when things go wrong like this, and we have had so many issues this week, technical issues. It's maddening. And so I was about to, it's the end of the day. It is 5:45. I need to go home, eat, and rest, because I'm not fully operational yet. I'm still suffering a bit from the cold that I had earlier this week. But I also want to finish the podcast, because it's already Thursday. Normally I record my shows on Monday, so I can get it to all of you. An alternative would be to do something like a live recording. This weekend I'll be filming in the south of the country. And then I was like, oh, that's going to be a hassle too. Let's not complicate things. I'll just stay for 45 minutes extra to record the podcast anyway. The downside is you won't be able to hear the jingle. So you'll see me stare like this. And you won't hear anything, but the listeners later on the podcast, they'll be hearing the jingle. So I apologize in advance. Also, I'm not sure if I can go back into the comments the way I do to answer all your questions. So hopefully you'll forgive me for not paying attention all the time. Because I also have to focus on the show notes for this particular show. So lesson learned. Never install a beta. Never install a beta on the computers you need to use on a daily basis. I'm so naive. I was like, oh, cool. Not cool at all. For some reason, I also don't hear myself here on this one. Why is that? There's not even any sound coming in. This is just one of those weeks where you really wonder what is going on. Okay, so, all right, that works. My headphones are connected to the podcasting thing. The volume of the microphone is at 100%. So why don't I hear anything? I also don't hear the jingles. Wow. This has never happened before. So maybe it's still in another mode or something like that. No. Podcast transfer mode. That's not it. I'm doing something wrong, but what? This is not it. This is not it. Okay, I do hear a jingle. I still don't hear myself. As if the microphone is muted somehow. I think I'm going to just turn this thing off and on. Maybe that'll help. I want to shut down the Rodecaster. Oh. I'm going to disconnect it from the Mac because maybe the Mac is overruling. I think there's a lot wrong still with Catalina. So maybe the Mac is overruling the internal circuitry of the Rodecaster. Who knows? Turn it back on. Well, welcome to my world. Normally, oh yeah, and now I hear myself. I hear myself so it was actually the Mac. It was the connection to the Mac. Oh my goodness. Oh. Anywho, hope you guys are still awake. I'm going to do my regular show if you want to hear the full show with the good audio, because now, of course, you get the audio from the phone. Hello, Japan. The light bulb outside your room makes it look as if you just had a good idea. I wish I had. Again, I'm going to record a podcast, so I won't be able to immediately respond to the comments, but I'll try to find a way afterwards to react to all your comments and possible questions. So sit back and relax. You'll still get the gist of the show. And again, if you want to have the full podcast experience, you can always subscribe to the podcast in iTunes or elsewhere. Or you can go to, Trideo.com, Trideo.com/Father Roderick, and you will find the link to the whole podcast feed. Here we go. Hello and welcome back finally to a new podcast episode. I'm Father Roderick and I'm recording this on International Talk Like a Pirate Day. Arr! Which I'm pretty sure if I do that for the entire show, you're going to be totally sick of it. So I'm just going to do it here in the beginning. Welcome to the show, laddie. Arr! This episode of the podcast is brought to you thanks to my patrons over at patreon.com/ Well, I know that's just no. You have to do the slash patreon.com/Father Roderick. Thank you so much for your monthly support. It helps me to keep this show ad free, and I don't have to bother you with all sorts of ways to monetize what I do. It's just I make this for you, and you help me make it. That's for me, the ideal situation. All right, we need to talk about everything that happened this week. And if you are a regular subscriber to this show, if you listen to the podcast on your iPod or your phone or even on your computer, you may have noticed that the previous show wasn't downloading. And whatever you tried, it gave an error message, or the show wasn't even there for a couple of days. Normally, I record this on Monday so that you can get it on Tuesday or Wednesday at the latest. It's already Thursday, International Talk Like a Pirate Day, and you'll probably only see this in your feed, I don't know, Friday, over the weekend. I have no idea. But last week, the shows weren't even there. The feed was broken, and I got a lot of messages from you on social media, personal emails, of people, well, what's going on? And that alerted me that something was wrong, because normally when I'm done recording, I don't have to worry about it anymore. So what happened was that we hosted our both the feed, so that is the code that your podcasting software uses to know where the new shows are, both the feed and also the shows themselves, so the MP3 files that you're listening to, were hosted on a service called FeedPress. And FeedPress was a relatively new organization, or is a relatively new organization, and when FeedBurner, that a lot of us podcasters used for our feeds, was abandoned by Google, FeedPress kind of entered the market saying, hey, we are totally ready to take over and come to us. It's super cheap, very reliable, was no nonsense, really made for podcasters. And that's what we did. We moved everything over to FeedPress, and we stored our files there. Well, first year, fantastic. What a great service. What a great crew. It was a small group of people that were running business there. And then, after about a year and a half, radio silence. No more blog posts. No more replies to our problem. When we have a problem, you write to the help desk. Normally you get like a ticket back and they'll follow up on that. Not a peep, nothing. However, the service itself was working fine, and we had already signed up and paid for a year. So we're, well, as long as it's working, who knows what's going on behind the screens, behind the scenes, I should say, also behind the screens, but well, it's working. So let's hope that we can make it until the end of our contract. Well, unfortunately, that was not the case. And so the entire service went down, which means thousands of podcasters were hit by this, and even more listeners. And so, and there was no way to figure out what was going on. If you Google, there's just nothing. You write, you tweet, you post on Facebook, nothing, no reaction. So we realized that we were, we were in trouble. And so over the weekend, we worked really, really hard to switch everything over to, in our case, Podbean. And a lot of our fellow podcasters were scrambling to find alternatives. Of course, you could go to Libsyn. Libsyn is a great podcasting service. And also very, very supportive of the podcasters. But for us, the reason that we went to Podbean instead of going back to Libsyn that we've used in the past is that with Libsyn, you pay a certain monthly amount of money, and then you can upload a certain, you get an allotted amount of megabytes or whatever. So the data that you can upload per month is limited. But then once the show is uploaded, it stays there forever.
So that's very generous. But for us, in our case, we had to re-upload all our podcasts because everything that was hosted on FeedPress was broken. And I don't think they're ever going to come back. I wonder what is going on there, but I don't have a good feeling about this. So what we wanted to do is bring back our archives and upload them all. And Podbean does offer you an FTP connection, and you can re-upload everything and fix the feeds. And so that's what we did. And hopefully, for most of you, things will be back to normal. Our current account also gives us the opportunity to re-upload even older archives, and maybe we'll do something like that for our Patreon supporters. I know that some of you would really like to go back in time and listen to really old shows. Now, of course, we have like a deal with SQPN, which was the former platform that hosted our shows. So some of the stuff is with SQPN, but even they don't have everything back online. Like, for instance, there was a lot of debate going on about Harry Potter, and I recorded, I don't know, 70 plus shows about Harry Potter, but that was still when we were with SQPN. But SQPN hasn't put them back online, probably also for the same reasons. You can't re-upload that to Libsyn easily. So I don't know if I can bring back, older shows like that, but at least we can bring back what we own and what I've done myself. So we'll still, we will need some time to figure out what we can do and what we can do, but at least the show is back. So really, my heartfelt apologies to all of you that have been going bananas over the feed not working, and of course we had no way to communicate with the podcasters via podcast because the thing was broken. So if you listen to this, then you're good, and let us know if it works for you, and thanks so much for your patience. But for us it was a bit of a nightmare because it's not that we don't have any other things to do during the week. We have a very, very small crew and lots of urgent things to handle. So it took us a while to figure out what was going on and to fix it afterwards. But hopefully we're back for most of you. Then this was also a week of surprises, but then also positive surprises. And the biggest surprise for us, you may have already seen it on my Facebook and on my YouTube feeds, was the launch of Disney Plus in the Netherlands. And so all of a sudden, Disney announced that they were going to launch Disney Plus in the Netherlands right there and then. And it was free for the Dutch, at least until the official starting date on November 12th. So they're using the Netherlands as a, let's say they're using us here in the Netherlands as guinea pigs to figure out if everything works well and to figure out the streaming, and then they can upscale it to the world. So I'm one of the few people in the world that has already got Disney Plus, and it is glorious. It is everything you hope it will be, but then even better. Just the other day, I was watching The Last Jedi on my TV using the Disney Plus app on my Xbox One, and I was able to watch the movie in 4K HDR. And seriously, it looked better than when I went to see it at the movie theater. It is so good. And just having access to the Clone Wars, to Rebels, to even the more recent animated series of Star Wars. Of course, all the promised stuff, the exclusive Disney Plus stuff is not yet there. So no Simpsons yet, no Mandalorian. So don't worry about that. We'll get to see that just as most of you when it launches on November 12th, and my apologies to all of you that won't have Disney Plus November 12th, but have to wait until 2020. But what I currently already am able to access is great, and I love it, and it gave me an idea. I was like, what if, I'm watching quite a bit of Star Wars right now, but what if I record short commentary videos, and I make that available to the patrons? I haven't done that yet, but let me know if you would like me to do that. And it's a way to thank those of you that are supporting me, and to give something that is more, I don't know, makes you feel a bit more special. So let me know if you would enjoy that. And if you are not a patron supporter, would that be something that would incentivize you to become a patron? And then, I kind of want to keep my stuff accessible for as many people as possible. So maybe I'll first post it on Patreon, and then over time, maybe release it on YouTube afterwards, after a couple of weeks or something like that. Um, but I think if I do it for patrons, I don't want to, create artificial boundaries to that. So even if you don't have much to share via Patreon, I don't think I'm going to put a number on it. But I just want to give something back to those of you that support what I do. Anyway, that was the news. A lot going on. Plus, and then I got ill. That was the best thing. So we got Disney Plus. We got this podcasting crisis, and then I catch a cold and I start to lose my voice, and I'm coughing, and I got a fever, and and still quite nice weather outside. So it's not yet the time of year I expect to fall ill, but I did, and I always have to be careful not to catch a bronchitis. Yesterday I was great. I'm thinking, oh, I'm good. I can go back to work. Today, I'm coughing a lot, and I'm not that great. So, yeah, let's hope this will all be over during the weekend. Coming up this weekend, on Saturday, I'm going to film in the south of the country. And then next week, what am I going to do next week? Oh, lots of things. I don't want to think about next week. Let's first get healthy, and let's talk movies and TV shows, because that is something you can do even when you're sick. And that's what I did. It's kind of curl up in a nice chair, a nice IKEA chair, and just watch some stuff. Because I couldn't run. I was too sick to go out for marathon training. I couldn't really work that much, but I could watch some TV. So that is kind of, in a way, preparation for this weekly show. All right, so let's talk movies. So, of course, you want to know, what did you watch on Disney Plus first? Well, a couple of things, actually. And maybe not exactly what you expect me to watch first. But the first thing that I checked out was, of course, Star Wars. And it wasn't The Last Jedi, but it was The Clone Wars. I've explained this before. I've never really followed The Clone Wars. I bought the first season of Clone Wars on Blu-ray. But it was very, very expensive. But I was so curious, I just wanted to see it. I also got the movie. They did this theatrical release to launch the Clone Wars, and it was not very good. But I bought it on Blu-ray anyway. So, but then I didn't want to spend, what is it, 30, 40 bucks per season to just watch the Clone Wars. So, but I heard so many good things about it. So that was the very first thing that I watched. A couple of episodes of Clone Wars. And I didn't start with the first episode of the first season, because a number of my fellow Star Wars fans that I know via Facebook and YouTube reacted on I did like, hey, I've got Disney Plus. Go, let me show you. I did it like an impromptu video on YouTube, which actually got tens of thousands of views. And a lot of the people that watched that, well, if you're going to watch the Clone Wars, why don't you watch it in chronological order? And I first didn't really understand what they were talking about, so I Googled it. Turns out that the Clone Wars was launched as a kind of an anthology type of show. So they wanted to do standalone episodes, and they kind of went back and forth in the timeline. The entire Clone Wars, of course, takes place between the second Star Wars movie and the third one, but they would kind of just jump back and forth. and now that the entire series is there, and over time, when they got more into the story, they realized, well, you know what, we just need to do this chronologically. We're just following Ahsoka and Anakin and Obi-Wan. Let's just focus on that. And so for the later seasons, it was all in chronological order, but in the beginning, it just jumped back and forth. And I remember that from the Blu-ray season, and I was like, why do they give us all these inconsequential episodes where I don't even know where they are? They're like in 2 sentences they will say, well, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin are on a mission on this and this planet, and it was like, that has nothing to do with the previous episode. So I started to watch. So I googled a list on Reddit, which gives you actually the entire chronological order of the Clone Wars episode, and I started in the second season with a couple of episodes. And then I went back to the first season. And it really helps. It makes for a better viewing, in my opinion, because you kind of already know where Anakin and Obi-Wan are going to end up. And but this makes me feel, this gives me the feeling that I'm actually filling in the gaps of things that I didn't know happened between the second and the third movie. So it's an interesting experiment, and I'd love to comment on let's say, on the story that is unfolding in the Clone Wars series. But as I mentioned, I think I'm going to do that for the patrons first. But there are already a lot of interesting things happening in that in the Clone Wars series that are sometimes very much Star Wars, sometimes very new stuff that they're trying. It's a bit experimental also. But I have stuff to say about it, but I'll keep it for later. As mentioned, I also watched The Last Jedi, or at least part of it, again in 4K HDR, amazing sound also. And while watching it, I still have the same feeling with The Last Jedi. There are things that are very different from what I expected it to be, but a lot of the things that some of the more bitter Star Wars fans criticize, I think are inevitable. If you look at what the Force Awakens establishes, sorry. Still, my brain is not functioning like the way it normally does. But if you follow, the Force Awakens and you think it through, what is the only thing that can be going on with Luke Skywalker, then a lot of the stuff that is in The Last Jedi was already part of the deal with the Force Awakens. Still, the portrayal of Luke Skywalker by Mark Hamill, the way he was directed, the kind of his dialogue, it just doesn't feel like Luke Skywalker. I understand the choices, but even Obi-Wan Kenobi was a nicer guy than this old Luke Skywalker. So he's so bitter and so out of character. Yeah, I don't know. It just, there are a lot of scenes, especially with Luke Skywalker, that I did not like. Even the flashbacks with Kylo Ren. I was like, I understand what they do story-wise, but I don't like the way it was acted. I don't like the way it was filmed. But, however, there's also so much that is very good in The Last Jedi, and there are some really interesting, daring new takes on the story, and so it does a lot of things that you don't expect, and that I think make the movie really essential viewing. And I can't wait to see how J.J. Abrams is going to bring everything back together in the next episode, in episode 9. So that was fun. And then I just watched some other stuff on Netflix. I didn't want to stuff my evenings with just Star Wars. So I watched a movie. Every once in a while on Netflix, they will show you the new stuff that they have. And one of the movies that they got the rights to, one of those movies was Geostorm. I like disaster movies. I'll be honest about it. I love disaster stuff, like the Day After Tomorrow, Twister. It's usually lots of special effects, usually quite mediocre special effects, bad acting, bad character development, and very predictable plot. I love that. Give me more. As long as it involves tornadoes and tsunamis and massive winter storms or glaciers, or I don't care. As long as it's a disaster movie with lots of cities crumbling, I don't mind. I like that. So that's how I started watching Geostorm. It's a story that takes place in the near future. You get, like, in the first 5 minutes, they will tell you in 2019, this year, everything went haywire and the entire ecosystem collapsed, and well, the things that we worry about, they show you in 5 minutes what happened. And then also very you need a lot of suspension of disbelief. In a few years' time, the world came together and they built this huge network of weather satellites. Not just satellites, but no, actually space stations that can totally control the weather. So I don't know, with our current technology, how that is supposed to happen between now and 2025, but in a movie, they make you believe that they can now fully control the weather. So no more rain during the day. Just press a button and it will just rain while you are sleeping. And when you wake up and you step on your bike, rain stops. Well, of course, technology will break down. That's what I experience as a geek and nerd on a daily basis. So whatever will go wrong, will go wrong. The question is not if it will go wrong, but when the system will break. Well, of course, the system breaks and it has disaster consequences. Entire cities are destroyed by all sorts of weather disasters. And there is only one person who created all this technology. He's the mastermind. He made that entire system would have not existed except for him. And he was fired, of course, because he's a little bit unpredictable and not a nice guy. And so they fire him. And now he lives with his daughter somewhere in the middle of nowhere. And his brother works for the government and is tasked to go and try to bring him back on the project because he's the only one that can fix the system. Trope after trope after trope after trope. Actually, bad trope after bad trope after bad trope. Then you get some stilted, very bad dialogue between him and his brother, and apparently there's some rivalry and some issues, some family issues. It's all so, oh my goodness, get on with it. Go to that space station and fix things. And of course, the things didn't break by itself. There's an evil plot going on of people actually deliberately breaking the system and wreaking havoc on the planet Earth. And then, of course, the day needs to be saved, and the rest of the movie is about, will the day be saved? You can probably guess what the answer is to that question. So, is it entertaining? Mildly. Did I have a good time? Yeah, it was okay. I did watch it, but it's a popcorn movie, which requires a lot of popcorn. But is it a good movie? No. It's really pretty bad. You thought that The Day After Tomorrow was bad? This is a lot worse. So, anyway, but it was fun. It's just inconsequential, stupid movie. And then I watched the Muppet movie, the original Muppet movie. It is right there on Disney Plus, because Disney also owns. I'd forgotten about that, but Disney bought the Muppets. And the Muppet movie was the movie that made me fall in love with the Muppets for real. I was, as a child, always watching the Muppet show. The Muppet movie came out. We went to the movie theater to watch it. I think I was in high school, and I loved it. That first song, the rainbows. What an amazing opening! But I had such a romanticized memory of the Muppet movie. I rewatched it. It's like, oh, it's so grainy. It's so the quality that must have been so low budget. So it's super grainy. The camera movements are very wonky. The acting is, the Muppets are great, just the Muppets, me being the Muppets, but the real actors that are in there, it's also cringeworthy. So it didn't age well. Let's put it that way. I still think that they should do a remake with better cameras, more budget, the same Muppets, slightly upgraded story, but you could totally tell the same story and do a reboot, and it would be, I think it would still be amazing. Sorry, from time to time. My lungs are protesting. They don't want me to podcast. And the final movie that I watched is a movie that comes with a warning. It's not for children. It's not even for all adults. So it's R-rated, but it's not a horror movie or whatever. It's a movie about nuns, and it's a very serious movie. And yet it's not for children. And if you are queasy about some scenes with sexual content, don't watch it. However, it's a movie that made a huge impression on me. It's called The Novitiate. I think I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. And it tells the story of a young girl who is raised by two agnostic or even atheist parents. A very rural environment. Her father kind of leaves the family, is abusive, and she's raised by her mom. Her mom is not religious at all. She's not baptized. But one day, her mother decides to go to church and to take her with her, and just to kind of let her daughter see why church is boring, basically that. And then a couple of weeks later, they're visited by a number of two nuns that are trying to recruit children for their Catholic primary school. And it's free, so that is a great option for a poor family. So the kid goes to a Catholic school. The school is run by nuns, and this all takes place in the early 60s. And education is very good, and the nuns are great with kids, and this young girl, when she gets a little bit older, starts to think about becoming a nun, even though she was raised without faith. But she's mesmerized by, I think, by the authenticity of the nuns that are teaching there. And so, to the horror of her mom, she comes home one day and says, I want to become a nun. And she goes through with it. She enters the convent with lots of other young girls, all in the age of 16, 17. And they start, not really the novitiate, but they become postulants. Postulants is kind of the first phase. And after a couple of months, sometimes a year, the postulants make their first vows. Those are temporal vows. So for those of you that are not very familiar, this could be a segment for the peculiar bunch, but religious people make vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. So poverty, you don't own anything. Everything you have is owned by the community, not by you. So no personal possessions. Chastity, it means not only like celibacy, you don't marry, but a result of what comes with celibacy is also chastity. So that means no sexual relationships, no sex whatsoever. So it's a chaste life. Your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit, and you give up any sexual activity because you have given your life to God. So it's a life without sex. And 3, the vow of obedience. It means you are not in control of your life. You pledge, make a vow to be obedient to your superiors. So that can be obedience to the Mother Superior. As priests, we make the promise of obedience to our bishop and to his successors. So it means I'm not in control of what I do as work. If my bishop asks me or tells me to go to another city and to minister there, if he wants me to, I don't know, stop podcasting, and he has solid reasons for that, I have to be obedient. And so that is, those 3 vows are part of the religious life. And for those nuns, when they enter novitiate, they do temporary vows, because that's the time that you're still testing. Is this truly my vocation? And it's also a time during which the convent or Mother Superior can assess if these girls are really called to the religious life. And then once there's certainty about that, you make eternal vows. which means for the rest of your life you will live a life in obedience, poverty, and chastity. The thing is, this happens on the verge of all these big changes in the church. The Vatican Council, the Second Vatican Council, is convened in Rome, and Mother Superior gets all sorts of news from Rome about all these innovations and these new plans, and the church is changing. And she can't cope with it. She thinks it's the most horrible thing ever. And she is afraid that the church is crumbling with all these innovations, and it will be the end of monastic life. And a lot of the things that that were a very important part of her life are now getting changed and abolished sometimes. And so she keeps everything secret for her fellow sisters and for the novices even more. What's more, this Mother Superior is almost a caricature. And I say almost because if you see it, it's like, oh, how can someone be so stern, so cruel sometimes, so there's so much psychological abuse of the other sisters, that you think, this is a caricature. This is the movie is made it's written and directed by someone who's not religious at all. I forgot her name, but she read the writings of Sister Mother Teresa of Calcutta, and she was struck and even blown away by the way in which Mother Teresa talked about her relationship with God, almost as if God was her husband, and they would have quarrels and fights, and it was a very rocky relationship. And we know that because those are that's what Mother Teresa wrote. She had a very stormy relationship with God. But she was fascinated by the fact that for her that was all new, and she was like, well, nuns are actually very complex people. I never realized that. I always thought they were just so very boring and very one-dimensional. The opposite was true. That's why she wanted to make this movie. So she uses a lot of the turmoil that she got from the writings of Mother Teresa and wrote that into the script for this Mother Superior. And so a lot of people were upset about this movie and calling it an attack. And of course, this is such a caricature. And I would say I don't agree with that, because I think, not only I think, I know that things like that happened. There were Mother Superiors like that. And actually not just before the Second Vatican Council. I know personally of a convent where Mother Superior was way worse than the Mother Superior in this particular movie. And the abuse of power is something that has always happened, and especially in those situations where, despite all the good intentions, the religious life turns into sectarian life, and people just grab the power, and there is no transparency. And I've heard about sisters leaving their vocation, leaving the convent, and completely losing their faith because they were abused by their superiors in a monastic setting. And I have a number of stories that corroborate the kind of portrayal that is done in this movie. What this movie does really well is to show what that does to those young girls and how they cope with it or don't cope with it. These girls are 16, 17 years old, so they grow older. They experience feelings, sometimes, they fall in love with other sisters, or they are hunkering for love, and because they may be not called to a life in celibacy. It creates all sorts of tensions between those sisters, and then the problem is not that they have those feelings, because they're human beings, right? It's not that once you enter a convent or you are ordained a priest, all of a sudden God switches off your biology. Not at all. But what is much more important is always, how do you grow in that celibate life? How can you grow in chastity? It's not something that you just flip on and then all of a sudden, you know, there is nothing going on anymore. No, but it's a what is very important is how do you accompany these young girls, or when it's a seminary, boys or young men, to learn how to grow in that life that is completely dedicated to God, and that is a chaste life and a celibate life. In this monastery, in the movie, that is not at all what happens. Everything that has to do with sexuality, with these feelings, is all labeled as very grave sin and is repressed. You can't talk about it. You are not even allowed to have those feelings. You are not allowed to have doubts about your vocation, about God. The moment that, or particular friendships, whenever that happens, Mother Superior just kicks you out, or humbles you to the point of sadism. And then, of course, the movie tells the story of what that means for that girl, and I won't spoil how it ends, but I thought that it was done. Sometimes it's shocking and disturbing, and at the same time, it's very authentic, and I'm blown away by the acting, and also in the first part of the movie, how much that resembled my own situation when I entered seminary. I was 17 years old when I felt that God called me to the priesthood. And when I see in the first part of the movie, when I see how they portray this falling in love with God, I was like, that is me. Well, I wasn't a girl and I didn't enter a women's convent, but all the rest is exactly how I experienced my early years in vocation. And the struggles also so recognizable, the doubts, am I good enough? How do I live this life of celibacy and chastity? And all that is part of, I think, the life of everything who was called to religious life or the priesthood. And so I was very impressed, especially because this movie was not made by someone who is familiar with the Catholic world in that respect, or with life in a convent. Maybe the only thing the movie omits, and it is a big omission, I think, is that there is almost no example of nuns in that convent that are actually totally where they should be, and they're happy with their vocation. It's like the people you care for the most all kind of leave and, well, fail in the eyes of Mother Superior, and that to me is not realistic. I think that in every, I've seen it myself in seminary, there are always fellow seminarians that can't cope and that that just leave the seminary. I've known a number of priests that have left the priesthood because it was just, it wasn't their vocation. Maybe, or maybe they make mistakes, it's possible too. But I also know that in every situation, in every seminary, in every, diocese or convent or monastery, there are lots of, the majority of the people are supposed to be there and live a happy life. Not always an easy life, but the monastic life is not always causing all sorts of depressions and struggles. And I consider myself to be a very, very happy priest. Does it mean that my life is always easy and that I never have struggles? No, of course not. But I know that this is my life and this is my vocation, and I will continue this life because that's what I feel gives me happiness. And I think that is true. And in the movie, you don't see that much. It's all as if monastic life in itself is just outdated and wrong and hurting people and causing damage. So, and maybe it is because the director and writer based most of her dialogue and the storylines on the witnesses or testimonies of nuns that had left their vocation. So people no longer or ex-religious. And they can still give you very valuable information and give you an insight in what religious life was like and what kind of struggles they had to face. But I think the movie could have been much stronger if she had also interviewed religious sisters that are very happy, or that went through that transition time and did find that balance that I think is essential for a religious life and for any life that is dedicated to God. So anyway, that was a long review, but again, I can recommend the movie. I think it's really, really well done. It even, when the movie ended during the credits, I was just, like, I sat there for about 15 minutes just in total silence. So that's how much I was impressed, and it made me think back of, you know what, the biggest question, I'm already kind of making the transition to, this is the Peculiar Bunch. You know what this movie did to me? The story is very much about, what do you do when everything crumbles? This Mother Superior, she feels that the church is literally collapsing, and she can't cope with it. These young girls, they see that everything that they first believed in, their idealism, the fervor of those first years, it's all falling away. And all of a sudden, monastic life is no longer the Audrey Hepburn, wonderful, magical, romantic world that they thought that they would enter for the rest of their lives. And they discover that it's hard, and it's difficult and demanding, and you don't always feel God. This is one of the things that you hear. And I was like, I totally recognize that. There are moments of where you feel you're in the desert. And where are you, God? You were so close. I could almost touch you. That's how much I felt your love. And now I don't even know if you're there, right? And everyone goes through times like that. And so the question that I asked myself when I was sitting there after the movie was over, and it was totally quiet in the house, it's like, what would I do if everything crumbles? If, I don't know, I was, I don't know, fired from the parish, or my bishop would tell me, stop your media activities. I've thought about this, I prayed about this, and I want you to stop with the podcast and with the YouTube stuff. And I don't think that he will ever say that, but what if he would say that? And he said, I don't want you to work in the parish anymore, because I think you're a bad priest or whatever. And whatever you do, just, I don't care, but you're no longer allowed to work as a parish priest, and you're no longer allowed to work in the media. I don't even want you to use Legos anymore. No more Lego building. No more Star Wars. What would I do? What would be... Would my life crumble? Would that make everything senseless? Or is my priesthood, is that based on the things that I currently do and love to do and do with all my heart? Or do I need a stronger foundation? Is the fact that I'm a priest and the foundation of that life, isn't that ultimately God Himself? So, is my relationship with God able to survive the storms? Even if I'm thrown overboard, would I sink like Peter into the water? Or would I be able to grab the hand of the one who called me? And could I wither the storm? That question, that's what this movie did to me. And that, in my idea, makes this such a good movie. A movie that makes me think, and that makes me ask maybe the most fundamental question of my life. Where are you if everything crumbles and the only thing left is God? Is God good enough for you? Or do you need Star Wars and Legos and media and podcasts and whatnot? It really made me think. I know what my answer is. I know it now. All right, with that. No, we already did the Peculiar Bunch. Books! Because I even did some reading this week. I'm reading such a fascinating book. It's written by a Dutch researcher and historian, author of one of the books that is already translated in English is titled Utopia for Realists: How We Can Build the Ideal World. It's a relatively young researcher and an amazingly good writer. Very, very, it's a page turner. And you would not expect that from an historian. I don't know, history books, sometimes I have to be very motivated to go read this. But this one, I'm just turning page after page after page. This is not his Utopia book. By the way, that was already a bestseller internationally. He has now written a book, and it's called Humankind, A New History. That's going to be the English title of the book. Humankind, A New History. But the Dutch title, I think, is actually more intriguing. And if I would translate that, the original title in English, it would say something like, Most People Are Good. And his theory is that we live in a very cynical world where, and the cynicism and the skepticism, we see everyone as a potential enemy. Economy is based on greed, on all sorts of online interaction is almost open warfare right now, and that makes us organize our own lives, and it makes us choose in a certain way. And he said, I don't believe that premise. I don't believe that the majority of people are evil, are egotistical, only think of themselves. I don't believe that most people first think of themselves. And therefore, I think that an economy that is based on greed, on the principles of greed, is going to fail, because most people are good. And I like that, because that's what I believe too. I think that, yes, people have a tendency to be selfish from time to time, but I think that most people are actually quite nice. It's always been my premise on YouTube as well. I remember I was streaming Lego one evening, and there was one of my viewers. Her screen name, I think, was Luna Lovegood, so I already was like, that's awesome. That's an awesome screen name. And at one point, she was like, I have never been in a live stream where everyone in the chat was so kind and respectful, and nobody is fighting. And I was like, whoa, yeah, I did not realize that actually the very nice laid back way in which my YouTube audience is usually interacting, even when I'm not there, sometimes I have to go open the door or something like that and then come back. And then everyone in the chat room is just chatting and being friendly and helping each other and listening to each other and sometimes even praying for each other. And it's like, I realized that in a lot of places on the web and on YouTube, it's war. It's a terrible. You normally don't read the comments. Whatever you do, don't read the comments, because it's terrible. It's a jungle out there. But I feel that, and it's also the kind of reactions that I get on the YouTube videos. Like, for instance, my reaction video to the Star Wars trailers. 95% of the people that react are like, you're such a nice guy. You're not, criticizing, you're not bitter, you're not hating on Star Wars, but you seem like a genuinely optimistic, friendly guy. And it's like, yeah, I'm definitely not always. What you see and what you hear on a podcast, of course, it's the cheerful me. It's post-coffee. I have times, like everyone else, where I'm grumpy, where I'm frustrated, where I'm not very nice. But if I look at let's say, if I put it in percentages, I would say I'm 10% really annoying, also to the people around me. But 90% of the time, I'm kind of cheerful, and I enjoy the things that I do, and I enjoy to be in the company of the people on YouTube and Facebook and my podcast listeners, and I think that most people are like that, We see a dark side of people in anonymous chat rooms, etc. And sometimes we start to think that the entire world is like that, but that premise is not correct. But what he does, and that is so interesting, he uses sciences, psychology, history, research to prove that most of the time, even stories that we tell each other, even research that we all took for granted and thought that it just proves that most people are evil, he goes back and, as a researcher, scientifically disproves those stories. And it's fascinating. To give you an example, you know that famous book Lord of the Flies, which is fiction. But the writer of Lord of the Flies tells this story about a couple of kids that arrive on an island and then turn into these murderous people. And when a year later they're discovered on that island, only a few kids are still alive and they've murdered the rest. And the book itself uses the premise that if left to our own, if there is no city that keeps us in check, we would be horrible barbarians. There are also quite a few historians that say, well, in the dark times, people were terrible, and we now are much more civilized, and we are, but if left to our own devices, mankind is terrible, and so it's a very black image of, or even a black anthropology in terms. I mean, with black I mean dark, and as if our souls are pitch black, and we're just we're terrible people. If not, if it was, it's what he calls it the varnish theory. So there's only a thin layer of varnish over everyone, and that's our civil interaction. As soon as you take that away, 99% of what we are is evil, selfish, even murderous. And so he's like, well, what if there's a real story of kids that end up on an island, and has that ever happened? And so he finds this story of a couple of kids that actually end up on an island. Their ship sinks and whatnot, and they're discovered about a year later. And it turns out that these kids were super social. They helped each other. They cared for each other. They made a vow to never quarrel, to never fight, and so the real Lord of the Flies story is a totally different story from the fictional book. But everybody believes the fictional book. A lot of the reality TV that we watch, we think that what we see is reality TV. Well, actually, I know from personal experience that everything you see on reality TV, because I've participated in a reality TV show, it's all scripted. It's storytelling. It's manipulative. People are being lied to. They're being incentivized to hate each other, to fight, to all the drama. There's no reality TV with drama, but almost all the drama is artificially induced. And but it does confirm in our minds this premise, this theory, this varnish theory, that you see, this reality TV, look how evil these people are. Take a show like Gordon Ramsay's Hell's Kitchen. That is not normal behavior. Even Gordon Ramsay is just a showman. He's actually a very nice guy. He's got a bunch of kids, and he's a very good father. And yes, he swears a lot, but that is a gimmick. That's part of his TV persona. But in reality, and if you've read his biography, you know that actually he's not at all like that. He's a very kind guy. He really wants to help people. He has got a passion for cooking. And yes, in the heat of the minutes, he will maybe sometimes explode, but doesn't make him a bad guy or an evil person. On the contrary. And so a lot of the things that you see happening in Hell's Kitchen is all fake. It's all like pushing people so that they become that. But if you would have the occasion to spend a week with Gordon Ramsay just cooking stuff, and let's try something out. You wouldn't have reality TV. Nobody would watch it because everybody would get along. So, another story, fascinating, is Easter Island. There is a prevalent theory about Easter Island that in the time that, in the age that the islanders built those big statues that are so famous for Easter Island, that was actually the beginning of the end, and that they even turned to cannibalism, and they murdered each other, and it was a horrible, it was hell on earth. And that widespread historical theory. And it seemed seemingly also supported by archaeological findings. And it turns out everything you thought you knew about Easter Island is false. And is actually, and he demonstrates it, why it is not correct. And so he goes on like, I haven't finished the book yet, but it's a fascinating book. There are some things that I don't like about the book, and most of them have to do with religion. The writer of the book is the son of a preacher man. His father is a Protestant pastor. He loves his parents, by the way. He dedicated the book to them. But he himself lost, according to an interview that I read, he lost his faith when he discovered that what they told him in church, that namely that Genesis is real, that it just happened the way it was written in the Bible, literal biblical interpretation. I've talked about that and the dangers of that. And then he heard in school they taught him about the evolution theory. And it's like, so I've been lied to all my life. So I'm no longer a believer. You see, it really matters how you interpret the Bible, and if you are a proponent of a literal interpretation of the Bible, or some of these stories may be allegorical, or maybe certain literary forms. It doesn't make them untrue, but not true in the sense that it's an eyewitness account. But anyway, so, but, and as a result, he is very superficial when it comes to religion. And he says, I'm only interested in religion as far as I'm interested in what religion does to people and how it makes people behave. And then he very quickly says, most of the time religion has a very negative world anthropological view. So very negative view of who we are, because, well, people need to be saved, right? So if religion wants to sell you a savior, then it first needs to establish that you need to be saved, so that you are actually evil. And without a savior, you're going to go to hell. And he is, well, he doesn't say that it's always the case, because his own parents are very good people, so religion also can help people be very good to other people. But there is so little about religion, and so almost a caricature of what we're, and I think also caricature of the. I wonder if his idea of Christian anthropology isn't based on a very Protestant view of who we are, whereas if you would. And I'd love to go and debate with him a little bit, or talk with him about the Catholic view of who we are, but because I think that the Catholic anthropology is fundamentally positive. Yes, we have been tainted by original sin, and we have a tendency to lie and to think of ourselves and be selfish, but we still are made in the image of God. And so we have an immense capacity to love and to forgive. And all that is part of who we are. And it's not, sin has not destroyed that entirely. That's the difference with some of these more Protestant views of mankind, where everything is rotten. And you need to be saved by Christ and Christ alone, because otherwise it's hell. And I think Catholics are much more nuanced. No, there is good in you. We would say to Vader. Luke is very Catholic, Luke Skywalker. I still believe there is good in you. If Luke were Protestant, he would probably say, Father, you will go to hell unless you embrace the light side. And Lucas, no, I believe there is good in you. Not you can become good, you can convert No, there is still good in you. And the goodness that is in Darth Vader's heart is what actually ultimately makes him choose for his son instead of the Emperor, and gives him the courage to destroy the Emperor. That is very Catholic. The good may be very far, it may be dormant, maybe forgotten, maybe almost completely gone, but never completely gone. And that goodness can be activated. And in most people, that goodness is part of their daily life. I know a lot of good people, and most of them are not even Christian, but they're just good because they're made in God's image, and God is good, and that's what they reflect. So, fascinating book. I'll continue to read it and maybe give you like a summary review in the next episode. What else? Oh, we need to talk a little bit about science, I think, or science fiction, or both. UFOs. Is that science or is that science fiction? I don't know. What does the jingle say? I don't even know what this jingle is. It's probably science fiction. Let's wait and see what it says. My brain is mashed potatoes right now. I need calories, sleep, and a little bit more health. Aliens. All right, this past week was filled with both science fiction and science, or maybe some scientific observations of what we thought was all science fiction, and I'm talking about UFOs. Did you read that report that they are now starting to publish reports on sightings of UFOs that actually are on the rise? Not sightings by just you and me, but sightings by professional pilots that have seen unidentified flying objects. Let's not forget, it's UFOs, not aliens. We, the media, and we, when we like to have sensationalist stories, we would love to see that as, oh, confirmation of alien life. But that's not the case. It's unidentified, maybe you should say not yet identified flying objects. Definitely objects flying, because they've been seen, sometimes also filmed, but we don't know yet what it is. We don't have, but what I've learned from skepticism is always go for the most likely explanation. An alien life visiting us in flying saucers is the most unlikely explanation of those UFOs. So there's probably a better and more scientific explanation. We just don't know exactly what it is yet. So I was reading up on that, and it was like, I'm fascinated that they're starting to, and the reason that they kept this kind of a bit under wraps is because of this hysteria about aliens visiting us. And most alien stories, or stories about encounters with aliens, alien abductions, have a perfectly rational explanation. And if you don't believe me, just listen to some of those skeptic podcasts. Skeptoid is a good one. But also Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, which is a podcast on SQPN. Very interesting. And the critical thinking, just keep your head cool and don't immediately go for aliens, because that is not a very scientific attitude in life. But anyway, speaking of aliens, of course, in a couple of days from now, you'll have this big Storm Area 1 event that I know that you've heard about. So this started as a hoax, basically a fake event that someone started, I don't know who. And it said, well, you know what? The government is trying to hide what's truly happening on Area 51. And we know, of course, all that it has to do with UFOs and aliens. And of course, if you've seen Independence Day, they even go to Area 51 and there are actually live aliens there. I love that movie. It's so cheesy and so it's such a bad movie, but it's so good at being bad. Anyway, so there was this idea, well, let's all go to Area 51 and storm the place. They can't stop 1 million people, right? And more than 1 million people have said that they will actually go to Area 51, and another 1.5 million people have said they are at least interested. So everyone in the area of Area 51 is praising him or herself for what is going to happen in these next couple of days. And of course, a lot of local businesses are like, bring it on! We have souvenirs, we have alien cupcakes and alien burgers and alien Coca-Cola, and so I think a lot of the people that say they're going to go there are not going to go there. I think this will probably very minor, but I still want to see what's going to happen, and I know for sure that there are going to be Netflix documentaries about this. Absolutely, someone or maybe multiple people are making great documentaries about this in a couple of years from now, or maybe next year already. We will see a documentary about Storm Area 51. The government, of course, is very anxious, and there's like, okay, what if 30,000 people are going to try to storm the premises? What are we going to do? Are we going to shoot them? So it's going to be, I think, a very, very interesting. I just hope that no one will get hurt. I mean, this started as a hoax, just for fun, and I hope it will stay that way, but I really hope that there won't be, any accidents or mass hysteria or whatnot. We'll have to wait and see. I think if I lived in the area, I'd grab my camera and make a documentary or a vlog. All right, let's wrap things up with a little bit of technology. There is one more thing. And, well, unfortunately, there wasn't one more. I'm talking, of course, about the Apple keynote last week. The announcement teased big innovations. Even the word innovation was part of the press release or the announcement of the event. And I was also fascinated by the logo on the invitation. And it kind of evoked the old days of the Apple, where the iMac was like this multicolored, semi-transparent, beautiful monitors with built-in computer. The glory days of Apple, where every keynote event and everybody the next day would be talking about it. So I was like, well, maybe this time we'll get something to get excited about instead of just upgrades. But alas, no, it was just Tim Cook enters the stage. Oh, I'm so excited. I'm not going to waste much time. We have so many innovations to show you. And what do we get? Just a new iPhone 11. So the iPhone 11 is a successor to XR. And it's a perfectly fine phone. It looks great. Wide-angle camera, just as everybody expected. And I have an Android phone now with a wide-angle camera. I love it. I couldn't live without it anymore. So Apple made the right choice. More battery life. That's what everyone wanted. And yeah, so this one has better battery life. So kudos to Apple for that. I think it will sell like hotcakes. And another criticism of a lot of Apple owners was the phones are too expensive, and you can't compete with all those Chinese phones that are same value but so much cheaper. So they lowered the price. Very, very good market decision. But is it innovative? No. The Pro phones, the iPhone Pros, they're great phones. Expensive phones, great phones, flagship phones. Are they innovative? No. Nah. No, it's Apple quality. So it's really, really good. Doing really, really well what other people have done before, other companies have done before. That's Apple nowadays. And I kind of like, I wish something. The new iPad. Great iPad, great value for money. But why still keep those bezels? Why keep the home button? Just give us this thin bezels like on the Pros. Don't give us this old design. The iPad has looked like that for years now. And if you want to have smaller bezels, you gotta buy the Apple iPad Pro, and they're so expensive, way too expensive. Apple Watch 5, always on screen. Great, yeah. But I have a TicWatch that cost 99 euros, $99, so even cheaper in euros, and it already had always on for years. So I was like, wow, I didn't even realize that the Apple Watch didn't have always on. So yeah, Apple TV Plus. They finally announced the launch start of November, right before Disney Plus. I bet you they were waiting for the announcement of Disney Plus so that they could decide the launch date and the price. It's not by accident that they didn't say anything about that so far. $4.99, $5 a month. That's okay. Not many shows though. Compared to Disney Plus, it's really, really thin what they offer. And you get it for free if you buy a new iPhone and an iPad. And that, I think, is how Apple will artificially get a lot of subscribers. Will they stick around for another year after the first year for free? I'm not sure. But anyway, I haven't seen anything. I may get it for $5 a month for a while. Just take a look. But even the previews, the trailers, there was nothing that was like, oh, I need to see that. So yeah, it was fine. It was great. Oh, and then they had the gaming service, flat fee, and then you get exclusive games. That to me seems dead on arrival, really. You know, games without buzz will not work. I don't think that Apple understands the gaming community. What makes gaming so cool is not that the game is cool, but that you play the games like everyone else and you get to talk about it, you get to game together. You can't do that with this closed system. It's great if you're already an Apple fan, and but I don't think it will last. I don't think it will compete with no. I just think it's going to fail. Anyway, that's what I believe. That was kind of my reaction. You may have a totally different idea of what Apple did. That's fine. I totally respect that. But for me, it was not what I expected. Well, it was kind of what I expected. So I was a bit disappointed. Anyway, there will always be new tech to get excited about. That was it for today. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next week. Take care, and God bless. And that's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for no jingles, and sorry that I didn't react to what you guys were posting. I have one problem. I still need to record my after show for my patrons, but my phone is running out of power. Although it's still got 15%, that may actually be enough, because this phone has a huge battery. This is the third day without charging, and it's still running, and I'm streaming. So yeah, but the question is, can I see your comments? I can. Actually, if I touch the screen, I can go back through the comments. So that means I can record my after show. That's very cool. Oh, you guys have been talking so much. All right, let's go. Hey there, and welcome to the after show. I'm Father Roderick, and hopefully you'll be able to listen to this and all our problems are over now. You have noticed that we had some trouble with the feeds. Are basically the service that we use for the podcasts went belly up, and they never came back. So we had to make some very quick. We had to fix it very quickly. As usual in this short Patreon exclusive show, I'll go through the comments and the questions that were asked and typed while I was recording this live. We've got a lot of people from all over the world, from the Netherlands, from France, from Japan, from the US, Atlanta, London, Belgium. It's very cool. So some people, of course, on YouTube associate me with Lego. So they were asking me, are you going to buy the new Lego Christmas set? Usually I don't. It's Christmas. You can only use that for a couple of weeks. And I don't really like the Lego Christmas stuff because it's all you know, kind of garish, a bit American, not very nice looking. So no, I'll skip that. We have someone from the Philippines. That's very cool. Let's see. Do I have any questions? I hope Disney Plus is not only English language like sometimes on Netflix. No, actually, what I like about Disney Plus is that they have everything in multiple languages. Not only, for instance, in with subtitles, but also dubbed versions. They have a lot of movies have Spanish tracks or French tracks. They even have some of them have what you call that, explanatory. So for blind people, so there will be someone narrating what you see. So you can close your eyes, and I'm going to try that out with some of those movies just to kind of see how that works. You should have a mental image of the movie, but no, they do a great job making this accessible and interesting also for people that don't can't watch, are blind. The haters are celebrating the victory that Johnson is not doing his Star Wars trilogy. Yeah, it's referring to Rian Johnson, who, after he did The Last Jedi, was asked by Disney to write another trilogy. And just the other week, he said something that, like, well, I don't even know when we're going to make this, because Disney is still figuring out its strategy for the next couple of years. So maybe I'll do another movie before I do Star Wars. And then the haters, the people that were upset about The Last Jedi, they're like, oh, finally he got off the project, no more Rian Johnson. But that's not what he said. He just said, this may take a while. And we already knew that Disney was first going to give us these movies by the writers of the Game of Thrones writers. So, I don't know. People just don't like Rian Johnson. Let's see. What else have we got in the chat? Did you visit Golgotha and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre while you were in Jerusalem? Yes, I did. I went to all the important places in and around Jerusalem, and it definitely changes your view of the Bible stories. And yeah, I was very afraid that the Holy Land would ruin my mental picture of the Bible, and instead it enhanced it. I cannot recommend it to everyone. It was amazing. Let's see. Do you agree that Rian Johnson ruined Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi? No. I think it was inevitable. The storyline, the actual direction of Mark Hamill, delivery, the way he was portrayed, maybe not. But the story, yes. I think there was no other way after The Force Awakens than to follow up with Luke, who had closed himself to the Force. I also did a pretty extensive review of the Novitiate, so go check the main show for that. Is Disney going to put Star Wars Christmas Special and the Ewok movies on Disney Plus? They're not there, and I don't think they will be. Especially not the Christmas Special. I don't think that anyone involved with Lucasfilm wants that to return. That was just a very dark moment, a great disturbance in the Force. Let's forget about that. So Lauren says, I think the life of a priest is easier than that of a monk, because as a monk, you just stay, you have to stay in a monastery for your whole life. Well, you know what? I think that every life, every how do you call it? Every vocation is a challenge. Every vocation has its graces and the wonderful things, and also the difficulties. I don't think that there is, in that respect, any difference. Do you know about nuns that like the Star Wars franchise? Oh yes. Oh yeah. I know a couple of American nuns. A lot of the sisters from the Pauline Institute. I know a number of them are very, very geeky, very much into science fiction and Star Wars and whatnot. Um, Jamie reacts to my uh, talk about vows and celibacy and whatnot. And Jamie says, "This is the most amazing detail I've ever heard. Vows and discernment to take a vow of celibacy, or to choose to take the different path. I adore your open mind, Father." Well, thank you. I'm just telling from my own experience. Um, Hi from the UK. I just wanted to say your Star Wars videos and reactions are great. Well, thank you so much, Wise Guy 100. I hope you like this live show as well, even though it's very simple. I'm streaming this, by the way, on my phone because I installed a beta operating system on my iMac, and now it doesn't work with my streaming software anymore. Oi, oi, oi. Let's see, is there anything else here? Just a lot of highs. My favorite Disney movie. What are my favorite Disney movies from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s? Oi. I grew up in the 70s and 80s, so the classic ones are. I actually, most of the Disney movies that I saw as a child were the bad ones. When Disney was really not paying much attention to the quality of their movies, but I still liked them. And I had actually, we didn't really watch many Disney movies because you had to see them in the theater. And we didn't have a VHS, we didn't have a video recorder. So the first movie that I ever saw was Bambi. And it was a screening during the summer vacation in a public school. I wasn't a Catholic school, but a public school. They they did a showing in their gym, what you call it, hall, and everyone could go there. So we didn't like to go there at all. That was a rival school. Those were pagans, you know, not Catholics like we were. But I remember it was in black and white. It was played on an old. It was a very, very abbreviated version of the movie. And so in black and white we saw Bambi, and I remember that I was so horrified that Bambi's mother was killed, and oh gosh, it was such a hard movie to watch. I was traumatized. And so most of the Disney movies, actually didn't watch them as a child, but we had these discs, these gramophone records that we played on a record player, and they came with a booklet, and it told the story, and it even had the songs in Dutch, the Disney songs in Dutch, and you could follow along, and they would have illustrations from the movies. And so we would have Snow White and the Sword and Stone. That was my favorite story. Never saw the movie as a child, but I loved the audio version of it. And the 101 Dalmatians, all those. So I've only heard like almost audiobook versions of those stories, but in my mind, I saw the movie. I saw it in my head, and I would play those records hundreds and hundreds of times. I even had, at one point, we bought them while we were on vacation in France, and we would have French versions, which were even cooler. I remember that we had a record of the second Star Wars movie, well, the fifth one, The Empire Strikes Back, and we bought the audio book, or the audio version on a record, before the movie came out, before I'd seen the movie. And I still remember, it had sound effects. It had, L'Empire contre-attaque, la guerre des étoiles. And it just would have the swooshing of the lightsabers. And fortunately, thankfully, my French was not good enough to understand what happened between Luke and Darth Vader. So when, on the record, Darth Vader, which was called Dark Vader, Dark Vader, when he said, Luke, cherche tes émotions. C'est moi, ton père. I didn't know what was going on, so I was like, I can't wait to see the movie. What was he saying? I didn't understand. And so I saw the movie and I was like, oh, Je suis ton père. That is actually, I am your father. Oh my goodness, I was so glad that I did not understand French. Because I would have ruined my first, confrontation with the truth of Darth Vader. Favorite Jesus Christ movie? yeah, Jesus Christ Superstar. That was the first one that I saw, and I loved it. And now I can't watch it because it's so 60s and so hippie. Jesus of Nazareth is also really beautiful. But yeah, Jesus Christ Superstar. It's still so much part of my youth. Anyway, who will try the Priest Simulator when it comes out? I hope there will never be a video game that's called the Priest Simulator. That can only be terrible. Thoughts on Borderlands? I love Borderlands 1 and 2. I've played them hundreds of hours, especially Borderlands 1. Borderlands 3, I haven't played it because it just came out. It's expensive. I saw the artwork of Borderlands 3 is a little bit on the religious side. So you see this one of the evil guys, and he is in a pose that reminds us of those holy pictures of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. So some Catholics are very offended by that. I'm like, ooh, well, that's interesting. At least I can do a YouTube video explaining where that image comes from. So I always think in opportunities, not in problems. I try. Okay, what else? We've got some Canadian visitors. Episode 9, are you ready? Yes, I've been ready for 2 years now. All the Disney, according to Helen, all the Disney languages on Blu-ray and DVD are also going to be on Disney Plus. That is cool. Will you be going to Galaxy Quest when it opens in Disneyland Paris? Or Galaxy Quest? Yeah, so the Star Wars land. Yes, definitely. You know, it's only a couple hours by train. I've never been back to Disneyland or Disney World. So that's still on my list. Oh, Galaxy's Edge is actually Galaxy's Edge. That was why I was confused, because Galaxy Quest is that great Star Trek spoof, which is one of my favorite movies. It's so cool. So anyway, that was it. That was kind of me reacting to. I need to wrap things up because the battery of my phone is almost dead, and I'm working overtime. It's already 18 past 7, and I haven't eaten yet. So thank you so much for being a patron. Thanks so much for your support. It means the world to me. And stay tuned, because as I announced in my regular show, the big show, I'm planning on doing some exclusive video commentary on Star Wars and make it available to the patrons as a thank you. So in addition to this podcast, you will have short video commentaries. But give me some time to do that. First, I need to really get healthy because I'm still coughing a lot. But once I'm fit again, I'm going to start that. So that's something to look forward to. Again, thanks for listening, and talk to you soon. Wrap number 2. Hey guys, thank you so much for your contribution in the chat. Hopefully this was more or less acceptable video-wise. I'm going to bring the MP3 into the computer, at least that works, and then I'm going home. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned and have a great day.